to everyone. Hope you all are safe in this lockdown. My name is KU and I take care of outreach and programs for GeoSec. I welcome you all for the Fireside chat with Niladri Mazumdar. So this webinar is brought to you by GeoSec. It's India's leading startup support system, which has set a benchmark by facilitating startups at 0 day, 0 cost policy. In the span of last 4 years, we have supported more than 200 plus startups and currently have more than 120 plus startups integrated with us. So cumulatively, our startups have crossed 8 crores of revenues and have generated more than 600 jobs. So we support our startups by providing them free co-working space, mentoring support, access to government grants, funding opportunity from investors, IPR filing support, access to laboratories, as well as infrastructure support from Gujarat University ecosystem. So currently we are also running an accelerator program in partnership with UNICEF for COVID-19 solutions. So the audience can find more details on our website, which is geosec.edu.in. So with this, I would like to hand over the session to Saurav Sanyal, who is the Managing Director of Strategica and board member of GeoSec. And he would introduce Mr. Niladri and moderate the session. So good morning, Saurav.
Thank you, Kayur, and welcome to all viewers on Facebook as well as on Zoom. As Kayur mentioned, at GeoSec, we are looking at doing a series of webinars where we look at bringing in some of the top decision makers in the country to understand how their industry is going to change, and also look at some of the challenges going forward, which we hope will be useful for our viewers. So let me first give a short introduction of Niladri. Niladri Mazumdar is the president and board member of Seiko, which is one of the world's largest watch manufacturers and luxury watch manufacturers. And he spent 25 years in the watch industry, first with Titan and then with Seiko. And he's based out of Bangalore and he's joining us from there. So Niladri, thank you for joining us at GeoSec. It's great to have you with us. So I just, we'd start off at the deep end, as it were. Given what's happening around us, how do you see the watch industry shaping up as we go forward?
So, sure, if you see, the impact of COVID is not just restricted to the watch industry. I think it spans across all industries. But similar to other industries, the short-term measures that we are looking at as far as the watch industry is concerned is definitely to, to take into account stuff like cash flow management. So if you look at the watch industry, we are an industry which depends on retail. We are an industry, in India at least, which depends primarily on shops being there and people going to the shops and buying the products. And given that most of these shops have been closed or will be in some way closed for the next few days or I don't know how many months, we have to look at alternative ways of doing business. When I say alternative ways of doing business, the basic policies of doing business might not change, the basic trends might not change, but the way one does, the medium through which one does business has to change. So if you look at what short-term measures the companies are adopting today, it would be, strict that oversight. I think that's very, very important. Identifying new financing channels, additional strategic come in, and in some places, restructuring of the business is going to be a necessity. If you look at long-term measures, I think everyone is, and we also need to explore possibilities to achieve faster business transformation, mainly in areas like online channel development, accelerated integration of omni-channel strategies, and of course, social media, the Facebook, how we can make that Facebook interaction into commerce, turn it into commerce options. So these media, social commerce connections will also play a major role. So these are some of the short-term and long-term strategies I think every watch company, in fact, every company in the retail space would be looking at in the near future.
That's interesting. So far, I mean, my limited understanding of the watch industry, especially the luxury watch industry, has been, it is very experiential.
It is.
It is very face-to-face and very experiential.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I remember attending a Seiko watch, I think with the master craftsman
Yes.
recently. And now that's completely turned on its head. The industry, especially the luxury watch industry, is going to be affected. How do you see, therefore, bringing that experience rather to an online medium?
So, very good question, Saurav. See, it's extremely, extremely difficult to get one of the main things about luxury. Experiential luxury has been a trend for quite some time, but with COVID, I think stuff like experience and in the future give the people that experience. But you're absolutely right when you say that, giving them that touch and feel experience, giving that the feeling of getting into, let's say, a Louis Vuitton store or a Seiko store or a Burberry store, and feeling that overall experience of the store is going to be difficult initially to replicate online. And so there is going to be a certain amount of lag between, giving that experience at the store level and giving that experience in another forum like online. So luxury will have to embark on a mobile digital first experience. It is going to happen. But, in India specifically, so luxury, while it's a very broad term, India is not at the level of luxury that you have in China or in Europe or in the US. We are not at that mature level of luxury consumption or luxury retail as yet. Not that the Indian stores sell other products or don't give you the experience. They give it in the same measure, but it's very, very clear that as far as luxury is concerned, in India, people believe, at least some of the experts believe, that luxury still holds a very symbolic, overall luxury, there's a symbolic value over function relationship for most consumers. So that symbolic value is critical. And industry experts believe that digitalization of brands for India currently is still a temporary solution. That as COVID, moves out and becomes part of our lives, and we have to live with it for the time, till the time, I suppose, the vaccination comes, people will start moving back to the stores is what I feel. It's how we modulate that experience at the stores along with the safety features and making sure the customers are comfortable is going to be what is very, very important. So experience will still be there. In India, people feel that the digitalization, while the transformation will happen, it won't happen so fast because the number of customers, you've been to Hong Kong and you've been to a luxury store in, let's say, Delhi. If you go into Emporio in Delhi, at any point of time, a Louis Vuitton store will have 10 customers at the max. So, and it's a huge store, so you have a lot of space and people can do the social distancing. But in a place like Hong Kong on Tsim Sha Tsui, you will see a Louis Vuitton store will have a line of customers waiting outside, like in an airport, check-in counter, waiting just to get in because it's packed to capacity. So it's also got to do with the level of luxury penetration in each country. And based on that, the digitalization will also move forward. In India, I still feel, and some experts still feel, that once things open up, the stores will open up, and the companies and the retailers will be, very cautious about doing business the right way, taking all the health risks, taking all the health precautions, and they will keep giving you that experience. But to say that we won't move towards digitalization and we'll live with the past, no. I think everyone has to understand that the world is moving in a different direction or needs to move in a different direction. And that will happen with the luxury industry as well. That is my view.
No, absolutely. I think everybody's come to the conclusion that while the watch industry or the luxury industry in general was reticent towards moving towards digital, but they have, given that everything is digital, I think this has just, the timeline of that change has now been jump-started, as it were. In fact, probably a business idea could be, how do you do luxury queue management?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. In fact, that's one of the points that is very, very critical here. So, when we talk about experience, one of the things about experience is I can go into that store any point of time. I don't need to think, do I have an appointment? Don't I have an appointment? And stuff like that. And you will see in the future, if especially during festive times or peak selling seasons, if COVID is there, you will have to take appointment. It's happening in Chroma. It's happening in various stores in India already. Forget luxury, in retail. And you have to take an appointment at Chroma and then walk in to buy your dishwasher or your vacuum cleaner.
Oh, is it? I was not aware of that.
Oh, it's happening all over Bangalore, at least, where it's open. So people have been, in fact, a lot of my friends, people known to me, have been pretty comfortable with that. In fact, they know that they have to go to that store at 1 o'clock. So they're planning their day accordingly. Of course, now the demand for dishwashers and vacuum cleaners are high. You know? but yeah, I think that will get into the psyche of people, and we have to utilize that. While saying that, that thing of, you know, window shopping, getting into any store whenever you want, that feeling of comfort will perhaps not be there for some time, at least during the peak selling seasons. So it is a challenge, and you have rightly said, you know, it's just squeeze the time of transformation has been reduced by years to months.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, I was just curious, and I've been reading reports that luxury is actually doing well. I mean, because rich people are stuck at home, they need to feel good, and buying something luxurious off the internet gives them a bit of a kick. Are you seeing any early trends in the luxury market or the luxury watch market, which seems to suggest the shift in the buying pattern of luxury goods?
Okay, so as far as luxury goods selling during COVID is concerned, China is a very good example. You know, Seiko in China, we sell close to 70% of our products, and they are luxury watches, online. And the same, if you take the same percentage of the watch industry in India, with what percentage of its sale is online, it's perhaps less than 5%.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a huge shift, you know, and that also shows how much scope is there for us, you know, to take it to that level and to keep growing our business. So going back to the China example, so during the COVID, what happened in China was there was a lot of online sales. As you know, e-commerce was open in China throughout COVID almost. And this online sales still was not so much luxury. It was more other areas or other product categories rather than luxury. While I'm saying that, it's not that luxury didn't sell, but not as much as other product categories. When it opened, we all know from our reports, when it opened, there was this major thing about, you know, I remember
revenge sales, I think it was.
So, yeah, there was a sale in some Hermes or some store, which was like crazy on the first day that it opened. But post that, I've been doing some research. Post that, that store does not register so much sales. You know, the sales have dropped. So it's not that it's a major drop; it's some 30% drop, but 30% is a lot. So I think it's very important to understand that you know, even in a very e-commerce mature market like China, luxury is going to struggle for some time. They have to find new ways of selling. I think that experience part is very critical. See, as far as shifting luxury business perception or focus towards online as opposed to offline is concerned, see, omni-channel is a great way to do business. But if you look at the overall business perspective, one is selling. The second is how do you market your products? And in that, the transformation will happen like this. So I see most of the companies, not just luxury, I think a lot of companies will shift their marketing moolah from going the normal media routes of newspaper, magazines, television to online. Information has been shifting and will shift further online. So you'll get perhaps more reviews online, you'll get more, you won't get so many offline, people won't invest on that so much offline. Every decision maker on the online space will become more and more important. So there will be a shift in marketing money shifting from offline to online. That will happen faster. That will happen immediately. It has happened over the last 2-3 years in India. It will happen, progressively accelerated. That's about it. So that is going to happen immediately. So going back to that question of whether luxury will work and it's doing well online, it's well, there's the decision is still open on that. We can't take a call saying that it is working.
Right.
not. Hello.
Yeah,
Now I can see your moves.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So no, that's quite insightful. In fact, many moons back, I used to advise the board of an e-commerce company. It was called NDTV E-commerce, IndianRoots.com. They didn't make it through. But one of the interesting aspects of the online sale that we had seen there was a lot of luxury products were being bought in smaller towns online. Especially in mining towns or smaller towns where there are less access to luxury retail. And some of our largest basket buys were coming out of much smaller towns. Do you see a similar sort of, do you have a similar sales experience, marketing experience for watches in online channels in smaller tier cities and towns vis-a-vis metros?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you see most of the sales that come for the watch industry, especially the luxury and premium watch industry, online is from these tier 2, tier 3 towns. It's not a new phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that has been going on for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's definitely the rate of growth from those kind of towns are far higher than what we see at the metros. Of course, the quantum is also growing out there. See, there's money in these towns today in India. And if you look at the retail scenario in these towns, there aren't too many shops which give them the whole range or the real brand experience. So given the fact that the people are today, thanks to telecommunication, to television and everything, they are exposed to every brand in the world. They're consumers anywhere in the world. So they want to have been living to tier 3 towns. So they want that full range. When I'm choosing my luxury watch, I want to see all the Seiko watches. Now, if I can see only 40 in a store and I think I'm being shortchanged there and I'm not seeing the entire collections, I'd rather go and buy it when I'm traveling abroad or when I'm going to Mumbai or a Delhi. That is what used to happen before. Now what is happening is with online, a lot of people are getting to see that entire range, the entire collection that a company has to offer of its products, and that is being delivered to his doorstep. So there is of course that factor of convenience. There's also a factor that he today has access to everything, to the whole gamut of products that the company has to offer. So this has been happening for the last 5 years. It will accelerate in the future as well.
Right. So what does that then mean for vernacular luxury retail? Is there a growing trend towards your messaging in multiple languages in India?
Yeah. So this has been happening internationally for quite some time. In fact, in my days of, I'm not talking about luxury, in my days of tight, which is, this has been happening for decades. In luxury, it has not happened. You're absolutely right, Saurabh. It has not happened. And a lot of companies, including Seiko, are looking at this very seriously. Even in our exposure in the online media space or any space, how we can make vernacular more important. Our customers and more so across these tier 2, tier 3 towns. So vernacular will be used in the future.
Right. And I also was curious to know what is the difference, especially in the watch industry, in how you market your products to men and women, for example. Is there a difference, and how do you therefore segment it online?
Yeah, so very, very interesting point. Very difficult to answer, but very interesting point. So men and women in the watch industry, if you take Seiko's sale, we are still at a 85-15% kind of a breakup. So 85% of our sales come from men and 15% are ladies' watches. So there is a bias towards men's watches still, but the growth of ladies' watches perhaps is going to be faster than men's watches in the future because the penetration is not so high. As far as ladies buying is concerned, I might sound slightly cliched. They are the more intelligent lot, and they are not very swayed by brands and marketing spiel and all sorts of stuff like that. So they see the substance in the product and then they buy. You cannot. It's easier, let me say, to market a story to a man and get him sucked into it than it is to a lady, to an intelligent lady. And so the ladies, when they go out, are looking for substance in their products. It serves the purpose for us because we are a brand of substance. But now for the other manufacturers, other sellers also, they are cautious of it. They know that when they are selling to a lady, they cannot say things that are not 100% correct. They cannot give experiences which are superficial. They have to give substance in the experience and the product. I'll give you a simple example in the watch industry. This was happening 3 to 4 years ago. 3 to 4 men's watches as ladies' fashion products. Brand ambassadors of who were ladies of very reputed international brands who used to flick a men's watch on that lady's wrist because the lady was, of course, popular and a star. And they used to say, okay, the lady should be wearing bigger watches and this watches and that watches. And it was basically a man's watch, nothing else. Now, Seiko, we have been not doing this for what even if we have a sports watch segment, we have a gents segment. So it's not the same gents design as a smaller shape or size. It's designed differently. The nuances of that watch are different. So what the lady consumer wants is which thought that by juxtaposing a man's watch on a lady's wrist, I will succeed, have not succeeded in the Indian market or internationally. So, in a country like India, we can't say that every sports watch is meant for men. I mean, look at our Olympic medalists. Most of them are women. Yeah. In the last few Olympics and the future also, I think you have the Mary Coms, the Sainas and everyone. So ladies are as involved in today's life, sports, business, everything as men are, and that's the reality of India, and the product has to reflect that. So a lady has its nuances. So if I ask a lady, it's a trouser, so wear the same trouser in a men's cut, she will not be ready to do it. Why in a watch? So she's also, so the lady segment is going to be very, very important for every manufacturer if they have to do.
Right. And one of the other interesting aspects of the watch industry, which is changed and it was seen as a challenge to the watch industry a few years back when our good friends at Apple decided to launch a watch. How have smartwatches changed the industry and Seiko's strategy? And where does Seiko see itself in the smartwatch universe?
Okay, so Apple, the smartwatch phenomenon is not new. I mean, ever since Apple started, it got recognized. As you know, Apple today is the largest watch seller in the world. It is even larger than Rolex. So that's a reality.
Right.
And it's perhaps a sign of the changing times. So I've been asked by media, by journalists for years, 5, 6, 7 years, what will happen when smartwatches come? Won't it be a huge threat for you all? Because it's a similar price point with the premium segment, perhaps not today at the Seiko segment, but anyway. So 2 points I've always made. One is, as far as smartwatches are concerned, the 5 letters are what we have to be very, very, wary of, is Apple. No doubt about it. And that's what it has showed. It has showed that by becoming the first #1 watch seller in the world, that it definitely knows what it's doing. The second part is people kept saying, people will start wearing smartwatches. They will stop wearing your normal watches. I think there is, it's 2 sides to a coin. Yes, that is happening across the board. But, there were a lot of people who never used to wear watches. They never put a watch on their wrist because time is everywhere, right? Today on your laptop, on your mobile. So you don't need it for time. It's more a fashion accessory, more a statement of your personality today than a timekeeping device. So a lot of people had stopped wearing that. A lot of my IT friends in Bangalore, I couldn't convince them, despite claiming that I'm a good sales and marketing person. I couldn't convince them to put on something on their wrist, which resembled anything like a watch. Now with Apple coming in, they've put on that Apple Watch, that iWatch on their wrist, and now they are bored. So what has happened is the same guys who I could not convince to put on a Seiko watch now comes back to me and says, look, Niladri, I've been wearing the Apple Watch for the last half a year, and I have to keep charging it and do stuff like that. And I need another watch, and I don't want to wear that same watch when I'm going for a meeting or when I'm playing football or tennis, and when I'm doing this or when I'm diving or whatever, doing whatever they are doing. So they want different watches for different occasions, just like the others now. And this was the same guy who was absolutely vehemently opposed to wearing or putting a watch on his wrist. So it is a challenge, but it has also created an opportunity for us. So I feel from every challenge comes an opportunity. It's how you identify it that's important.
That's very insightful. I think what you're saying here is that Apple has actually expanded the pie.
Absolutely.
And people have gotten into a habit to wear watches. So they'll have an offline watch and an online watch, as it were. And I think it can be seen in other industries, like the book industry, for example. I mean, there was this huge shift to reading on the Kindle. That still exists. But people have sort of shifted back to buying hardbacks and paperbacks. And at one point, I remember 5 years back, they were saying that all bookshops will close and they'll be dead. But I think the bookshops have come back with a bang. And I guess a similar trend will be seen in the watch industry, where people will, especially the luxury watch industry, I think, where people will understand nuances and so the tradition of watchmaking, as it were.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. A good example is books. Again, it comes down to the experience. When you're reading a book, flipping through that page, holding that hardbound first or second or third edition, or that rundown edition of book. Is an experience, as what retail books, each book plucking them did. So there is going to be a survival of both, both the modern way of doing business and the traditional way, and whoever finds the right balance will succeed.
Yeah. In fact, one of the other things I was curious about was the whole generation thing. I mean, the younger generation is a lot more exposed to technology, and a lot more, from a very young age, they use technology, unlike old people like us. Do you think there's a difference in how watchmakers will respond to this generational use, or is tradition still a strong pull?
Yeah, so as far as the watch industry is concerned, tradition will always be a strong pull. It will be a strong pull. Tradition, craftsmanship. It's more creating an artwork. It's creating art. Creating a luxury watch is no less than that. The effort that goes into it, the finesse, the craftsmanship that goes into making any Seiko luxury watch is no less than a fine painting or a piece of sculpture. When you're putting handmade, when you're putting together 400 different components into one small, this size product, and this is not a robot doing it, this is actually men sitting and doing it themselves. It's art. It has everything has to, of course, mechanically work perfectly for that product to run, but the design of the product, the feeling that the person gets of wearing that piece of art is what is also very important. So that will always remain. Going back to your question of the new generation are more accustomed to handling digital than, of course, we are. Yes, that is a reality. Every company, and Seiko had done it a few years back with our Astron product. We had a GPS solar watch called Astron. So anywhere you traveled in the world, you at the press of a button, the watch would set itself. It is an analog watch, not a digital watch, mark my words. So it's not like a mobile phone, but the hands would move. So you reach Dubai and you press a button, and within 3 seconds, the entire watch would have changed to Dubai time. You reach Kathmandu, for that matter, which is in the weird 45-minute world time. And you cost you do that, the watch will change. So basically the watch, up to 11 satellites that are roaming around the world, and it gets a signal from there. Now, even if you don't press the button and you reach Dubai or you reach New York, twice a day, the watch will set itself by taking signals from the satellite. Now, the accuracy of that watch is 1 second every 100,000 years. Now, who is that watch meant for? Of course, is fabulous because it's a watch and change the time and do all of that stuff. Here, what we are saying, you just walk out of the flight and the watch changes it for you. And you're ready to go. Of course, that's one of the functions of the watch. There are various other functions. I won't bore you with that. But so that was meant for the global traveler. Now, for the new generation also, there will be products which companies will come out with, which will address their immediate needs, which will cater to their likes and dislikes, which are important to them. So I think that transformation will happen. While that will happen, there will always be a traditional art come craftsmanship side of making that product. So there will be a technology side of watchmaking, and there will be a craftsmanship side of watchmaking. And I think both will simultaneously live together.
Right. That's, quite interesting. I think I just wanted to remind the viewers that if they have any questions, they can post it on the Facebook page or our chat page, and we'll try and see if we can get Niladri to answer them. I think what I wanted to do is sort of move on from the watch industry to you for a while. We wanted to also give our viewers a feel about how you made some of your career decisions as post your business school. So just to give us a feel, you spent a decade at Seiko, you spent a bit more than a decade at Titan before that. But how did you jump into the watch industry, and what was the journey?
Well, quite by chance. To be very frank, when I left college, like every young guy, I was looking for a job, and the Tatas always appeal to people. And so when Titan came up with this opportunity, I said, why not take it on? Of course, there were family compulsions and all of that, but that left aside. It was a good company to join. It was a fabulous stint that I had in Titan. I still rate it as one of the best companies, not just in India, but in the world. I was there for around close to 13 years. I had 2 stints in it. I actually went back to study after 6 years and came back and joined them. So Titan was a great experience, because when I joined Titan, it was almost a startup. You have a lot of people in this group who are somewhere that startup philosophy. So a government giant called HMT, it used to rule the roast at that time. That helped us a lot in capturing the market, doing things which are very, very different. And so Titan was a great stint. So after doing a lot of sales, marketing at Titan at various levels, I actually thought of going and educating myself again. And when I came back a few months, MD of come back. I said, Bhaskar, I will never join watches again. I've done enough of watches. And lo and behold, then I joined. So Bhaskar said, you don't need to join watches, you join jewelry. We're getting into jewelry, so why don't you join the jewelry team? So I remember I joined them as a brand manager for Tanishq. And that was the time Tanishq was in dire straits, really. It was making huge losses. And at one time, this is not official, there were rumors of it being sold by the Tata Group, that division of the business. So today, if you see Tanishq, it's the backbone of Titan. I think 60 or 70% of the turnover of that company comes from Tanishq, the jewelry division. So I remember at that time, Tanishq was extremely exciting, because here we were making a lot of losses, and we were thinking that we can be the Cartier of India. So our showrooms were marble, closed, not open, not welcoming. In fact, an effort initially was being made not to keep people out, like Katia used to do earlier, rather than get people in. So that didn't work for us in India, because jewelry was a business by name, perhaps his chacha, mama, whatever, and that was the business that we were in. And we realized we were not prepared for that kind of a business, because our guys were more professional at the counters, who were only busy, selling the right kind of product at the right price, saying the right things, not getting into the nuances of personal relationships with that customer, not getting the jhalmuri from the nearby, the pakora from the nearby shop for the lady, which have in jewelry shops across India. We could meet a campaign, I might say, post that. And today it's huge. It's more than $2.5 billion as a business. Of course, it helps that the jewelry business sector in itself in India is huge. So it was a movement from being kind of a startup for Titan watches to moving to kind of a startup in Tanishq. And then I said, okay, I got tired of doing Tanishq. And so whenever I feel comfortable at something, I think I need to rack my head and say, okay, what else can I do? It hasn't happened too many times because I've just changed 2 or 3 jobs in my life. But within that, I shifted from Tanishq to international business, Titan, wherein I started looking after the US and South America and Europe for all Titan brands. That was another very, very interesting experience, because we set up Tanishq stores in the US. And that's a very, very competitive market. So that was, again, like a startup, because you're going into a country, no one knows you, no one knows your brand. Most of them don't know the Tatars as well. And you're trying to set up a business for the Americans, not for the Indians, not in Jackson Heights, or not in the Indian markets, but in the real malls in New Jersey, in New York, in Chicago. So that was very exciting. Then when I was doing this international thing, the Seiko opportunity came up, and Titan was very comfortable. It was a great company to work for, so I had no reason to leave it. But the fact that I could start up this business in India encouraged me. Here was Titan, which was by that time a very reputed player, a big company. We were all sitting in the corporate office making big decisions and having a great time working at that company. And here was an opportunity where I would have to start from scratch again, where there was no office. And I remember starting at a business center, and me and my Japanese boss, we went to a stationery store. And both of us went to a stationery store and bought staplers, paper clips, paper pads, and whatever you need to start that office. And we were in 2 small cubicles in a business center in Bangalore. That opposed to being in a 7-floor building, which has only Titan employees, and you have a huge cabin sitting with sofas and bearers and all of that. So it was quite, scary, but quite exciting. So that's how we started India in the premium luxury segment but every time you get into this kind of a business, it's very exciting. It's very exciting to do something new. Even when I started clocks in India for Seiko, our clocks were priced at 5,000 rupees and above, and no one had heard of that. In fact, Titan earlier had gone into clocks 7-8 years before that and failed. A monopoly player like Titan in that industry. So it was very scary for me to get into clocks, and you had other brands like Citizen also failing in the Indian marketplace with clocks. But we took that plunge, and we said we can sell clocks at 5,000 rupees, even though at that time, the average price of a clock being bought in India for whatever decoration or gifting was around 500, 600 rupees max. And I was talking about 5,000 rupees. So today, this has been another 10-year journey, and we, 20% of my close to 550 business. I believe, like the Coca-Cola MD once said, what is your competition? He said water. I believe that if you say what is my market, I said the number of rooms that are in any metro or tier 2, tier 3 city in India. So that's the scope of that business. While we are all accustomed to seeing watches or time mobiles and everything, we still wake up and look for that clock, for our time. So I might be wearing the most expensive luxury watch in the world and the most expensive automatic mechanical luxury watch, but I have to work up because by that time the mechanical watch might have stopped and set my clock. So I don't want to do it with that Ajanta clock on the wall, at least set it with the Seiko clock on the wall. That's the thought process you have to have.
It's an incredible journey. And in fact, you're probably one of only 2 non-Japanese board members of a Japanese company. And Japanese companies tend to have Japanese leadership in most of their subsidiaries around the world. I mean, in general, not just the watch industry. So I guess 2 parts to the question: how did that come about, and what's the difference in work culture between an Indian company and a Japanese company that you've seen?
So when I started working for the Japanese company, I spoke to a lot of people who would give me advice and whom I considered as mentors. A lot of people, to be very frank, had a lot of apprehensions at that time. They kept saying, you can join, but you will never reach the top, because that's not that policy. They always have the Japanese sitting on the top. You can go there, but how much independence you will have in taking decisions is a big question mark. That's another thing that kept coming up at the beginning before I joined. So I said, let me take the plunge. Let's see. And what I found out from my fantastic 13 years experience has been, most of this is unfounded, in a way that when I moved in, yes, I had moved in for a culture in Titan where I could move into the MD's office or the general manager's office or the senior vice president's office without an appointment, perhaps. I don't know whether you can do that in Titan now, but we could. And it was very open culture. And here I am with a company where, like any other company, hierarchy is very, very important, like most Japanese companies. But I found in Seiko a culture that is more open than perhaps other Japanese companies. I don't know. I've not worked for them, or is said to be prevalent in other Japanese companies. I've never felt a barrier when I wanted to talk to anyone, whether it was my senior. If I had an idea which was good for the company, they would give it a listen. That idea sometimes was not right. Some ideas were correct, some were not wrong. So when it's not wrong, they will tell you why it's not wrong, why it's wrong, and what are the reasons they are not taking on that idea. But when it's right, they will back you to the hilt. Irrespective of what level you are, where you're coming from, doesn't make a difference. So there are a lot of things that I've changed, not just in India for retail, but across the world as well. So when the second thing is, what the Japanese really believe in is trust. If they realize that they can trust an individual or a team, it's very difficult to get their trust. It's very, very, very difficult. But once you gain their trust and you can give them the confidence that the trust is not misplaced, they will stick by you and they will give you all the independence that you require to run your business. Today, if you see, I of course report to the head of Asia and the head of international business, but as far as India is concerned, me and my team take all the decisions. There is almost no interference at all from Japan. The second part is, a lot of people for the luxury business, another thing that doesn't happen very often is making products specifically for a certain country. When I came in, there are 2 things I told the Japanese when I joined Seiko. I said, 1, you cannot treat India as just another country. So you can't not give the best products to India or later. Second is, you have to understand it's don't get disappointed if there is a sudden downwind or a that hasn't happened. But so going back to the products front, today we get products for Seiko in India, launched at Seiko in India, even earlier than countries like Singapore, Dubai, and other nations. Now, in how many product categories does that happen? We have collections that we have designed sitting in India like the Lord collection, and now we have the Coutura collection, which we designed sitting in India, and it sells in more than 80 to 100 countries in the world today. Now, other than the car industry, I don't see any luxury industry or product which is doing this. Now, this product is part of the international collection today. These categories, the Lord collection, the Coutura collection, entire from the hands to the dials to everything is designed by us in India. They will not start the production or give a approval for the design till we say yes. We are the authority. And so it's been a great experience working for this company. So when people say, the Japanese are not flexible, they have a rigid thought process, some even say tunnel vision, it's not true. From my experience, and not because I'm still working for this company, but my experience is just not true. The second point is something to learn from them, which you said, Saurav. I think one is processes and systems. Their processes and systems are fantastic. Their planning is meticulous. They won't touch something unless they've planned every bit of that entire, whatever the trajectory of the play. So their plan is, so even if they come for a tour, you will know which restaurant you have to tell them which restaurant they're eating in on the 5th day, dinner, how many people are sitting on that table, which positions each person is sitting at. So that is still there. But they also appreciate the fact that Indians, while we are not so good at processes and systems, and we are still learning, the Indians, as Indians, we can tackle a crisis much better than the others. We always push ourselves into that crisis. That's another story altogether. When we are there, we think better than the others. So we should not say that we are not good. We are very, very good in certain things, and they are very good at others. So as far as quality is concerned, whether it's their product, their work, dedication, processes and system, nothing to beat the Japanese.
I think increasingly as India will look to plug into the global supply chains, it will be very critical for India to plug into the global supply chains. I think understanding multiple cultures and how they work and being able to therefore adapt to those cultures and being able to sell into those cultures will be a very critical skill, with many of our startups must understand that, we have to be able to work with huge cultural range to be able to sell into those global supply chains. So, I think understanding Japanese culture and the Japanese market itself will be a very critical aspect of any successful startups, market. For example, Oyo themselves have had a fairly successful run in Japan, from what I hear. Although right now we don't know how they are faring there.
No, Saurav, you're absolutely right. I might just interrupt you here. When we are talking about making ourselves more tuned towards different culture of our businesses and in our entire business space, we also had an example from my side when I was the only non-Japanese as an let's say international subsidiary. When we used to sit for those board meetings, it used to be all Japanese, right? Everyone else is Japanese, so they're all speaking Japanese. Now I know a spattering of Japanese. I can understand a little. I told them though, but I know a little bit of it. And so I couldn't, for my life, I couldn't understand everything they were saying. But they were very sensitive to that. And every meeting that we have, they always, just for me, imagine you have a board, a huge team from N number of countries. And just for me and for another person when he joined, they used to have an English version on one side of the presentation room and a Japanese version. That's the sensitivity they have for doing business. And any country, Prime Minister just now said that we want to create Indian brands which will go global, right? And I think that potential is definitely there. I buy into the Prime Minister's point. But to do that, one has to be sensitive to the ways of doing business in other countries. Sort of, you're aware. You've studied in England, so have I. You know, we used to have a lot of classmates who used to come from China, right? And they were actually, some of them were funded by the Chinese government. So they used to come and do their MBAs funded by the Chinese government. So when we used to ask them that, you know, what are you doing here and why does the Chinese government fund you? They said, our only criteria is we have to go back to China and we have to help the Chinese companies do business with Western counterparts. So that's what China has used. I'm not saying India has to fund the MBA students, but the sensitivity that we have towards doing business with different cultures, we can do it the best. You know, you look at the number of CEOs, MDs that you have in international companies. I don't think anyone is more adaptable than an Indian manager. So only thing is that sensitivity has to go down the other levels of management, and I think we will succeed.
No, absolutely. In fact, I also sit on the board of an Irish company, and we are doing some business with China. I don't think so far China has made as much progress as, for example, Japan. Of course, Japan had a head start, and it was quite a challenge trying to get a deal using translators, because, you know, in a deal situation, having translators, quite often the body language is not the same, and you're about as good as your translator. So I think that was an interesting learning curve for Indian businesses. And I think more and more startups and brands must, I mean, I think travel is a great teacher, and we should push our startups to visit some of these markets, which are going to be big markets for the future for Indian brands, so that they can understand the culture and understand how to plug into those supply systems. And increasingly, I think there will be a push from India to do that. So I know that at Gujarat University and GUSEC, we are going to be supporting entrepreneurs based in Ahmedabad and Gujarat to go and explore markets for their international and global markets for their products. So that's a push that we're going to be doing from our side, essentially for making sure that people understand how the global supply chains work, how global financial systems work, how global support mechanisms work. So absolutely, I think that will be a very critical part of India succeeding.
You know, sort of here, I must mention that we have this thing of, you know, we know English. So we, in most places, we are overconfident. You know, we think English will take us through, you know, the knowledge of English and the language will take us through. And we don't need to learn anything else. We don't need to, you know, dress properly. We don't need to perhaps, you know, be sensitive towards the little idiosyncrasies that every culture has. And that, I think, sometimes is a failing for us Indian businessmen. The more we get ourselves sensitized to that is better for us. So basic things that each culture has its own idiosyncrasies, what I was saying, just make yourself knowledgeable about that when you're going to do business in another country. Not just going in a suit and tie is, okay, important. Carrying the right, even the luggage gear is important. You know, what you're carrying, your files in is important. Everything is important when you're doing business. But to have the confidence, I find that when a lot of Indians, we go to do business outside, the difference perhaps between why I perhaps got here and why others, despite being perhaps better than me, have not, is perhaps one thing is confidence. You have to be confident you're as good as them. And that is the projection that has to come out from you. You can't project that you are, you know, somewhat subservient or somewhat doubtful about yourself. So we Indians are great. You know, what we have inside us is unparalleled. All we need to do is be confident and project ourselves the right way and be sensitive to other people's little idiosyncrasies. Otherwise, we have everything to succeed in the world stage.
Absolutely. In fact, that reminds me of a story, and I have worked across 70 countries. I've done business in 70 countries. You know, one of my early experiences when I actually backpacked Europe to look for clients, and one of my first clients were in France, and one of my first meetings, I walked into the meeting and they would speak to me in French. Unfortunately, 15 years back, the French were not as forthcoming as the Japanese were. Yeah. So they would all speak to me in French, and here I was, I didn't speak a word of French. So I started responding in Hindi. And after a while, we got to the place where we said, "Look, guys, both of us know English, so let's, I know I can speak 3 languages, you guys can speak 3 languages, but both of us can speak English." Of course, I never got that deal, but I think even many European countries have understood that they need to be part of a global supply chain, and India is a big part of their supply chain and their market. So they've also opened up to us, and so it's important that when we go there, we have that understanding that they come from a different culture and language, and they need to understand therefore our culture and language, and so it can be done subtly. But it's an important aspect of selling globally.
No, like I said, do a bit of homework before you go to these countries.
Yeah,
a little bit of homework, perhaps just a Google search. What is unique? 10 unique things about Japan, or 10 unique things about Sweden, or what are the 10 idiosyncrasies that they have? That's enough. I think that is enough to get you the deal sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm just going to go into some questions. We've got a couple of questions from Facebook, etc. Before we close the session. So if anybody would like to ask any further questions, do put it on our Facebook page or on the Zoom chat. Prashil Desai has asked, once the impact of COVID-19 decreases and there is a demand of product with your company, will your company start production with full strength, even though there is a chance of a second wave of COVID, or is there an alternative strategy? How are you strategizing?
That's a very, very good question. So what companies today are going to do as part of this tactical that is concerned, one of them will be, of course, to look at their stock scenario. How much stocks they have. Do they have enough to fulfill the current demand? Do they have the manufacturing capabilities? Because some of the manufacturing units are down. For example, 1 or 2 factories in Japan, one factory in Japan is still not operational as of today for us. So one has to really look at that very seriously. One of the tools some people will use is to make a more fine-tuned supply chain system and make a more fine-tuned merchandising strategy for their company. But going back to his question, when things open up, will manufacturing come back to its previous level? Well, I think it depends on the estimate of demand. And we expect, in the 1930s and 40s, there was the global depression, but luxury didn't get affected too much during that. But that was long time back, and luxury was very small. Today, if you look at the luxury business, we are a $1.3 trillion pound business worldwide. It grew by 4% last year. So every business that is in this industry is going through a tough time and will go through a tough time in 2020. 2021, 22 is where I think things will start looking up again, provided there is nothing else coming from other countries or any other viruses coming down the way. I hope not. But I expect it'll take a year at least for these companies to really fine-tune their strategies and to know that this is the amount we should manufacture, this is the amount we should not. While saying that, the bigger companies, which are, let's say, the winner companies in the luxury business, will be the ones which will survive because they have deep pockets. They can weather the storm. They will perhaps buy out a lot of the smaller brands, because the smaller brands will not be able to survive this onslaught if it keeps going on for too long. So it will be a mixture of a lot of this. Where do you put your money into more manufacturing or getting some kind of a brand or an asset which will be good for you in the future? So it's a lot of difficult decisions. But I think in a year's time, manufacturing and supply will be back to normal.
Right, and I think you're right. There's likely to be consolidation in the industry. And I think that'll be across industries, not just manufacturing. But so another question that has come out from Abhishek Sanwal from Facebook was, what will be the sales focus and strategy post-lockdown to cover up for the sales deficit target in the current situation?
I wish I knew fully. I would have been in a great position then. No, so jokes apart, I think it's very, very important to understand that COVID is going to be with us for some time. Prime Minister has given indications that things might open up further post the 18th and in the months to come. But I think the speech made it very, very clear that we can't close the economy for much longer. The economy has to open up slowly but steadily, at the risk of not endangering people's lives, of course. That is of primary importance. But the economy will have to open up for India or any other country to be competitive in the world space. For us, that is also very important as a business, because unless our stores open up, as I told you, we do 5% of our business online. So to take 5% to 75% is very difficult. To change people's buying behavior so fast is also, it's going to change faster, like sort of rightly said, but to change our entire system so fast also is going to take some, to be very frank. But, so post-COVID, if you say, are we going to get back the sales that we've lost in March, April, May, and perhaps June? Perhaps not. I mean, for most companies, perhaps not. I think they will have to understand that, post-June also, when it opens up, it's not all going to be hunky-dory. It's not all going to be, we go back to normal and we are alive and kicking, and so there's no threat. So people have to bear up with the fact that there will be a loss of revenue compared to what it was in the years before or the year before. And over time, we will get back to that revenue level. So the planning has to be based on that. Of course, the people will always try to look at ways to get back and grow from 19 levels, but that's at this point of time looks more wishful thinking than reality.
Right. We're getting some more questions in. So I'm going to take these last two questions. One is, Mr. Mazumdar, you said 85% of your business is dominated by male buyers and 15% by female. How are you going to increase your stake in female buyers in India?
Yeah, so we've been doing that over time. Like I said, one of the, so if you look at product, like I've already expressed that concern that a lot of brands never used to make watches meant for women. They used to juxtapose their men's watches on and say it's a woman's watch. So that Titan never did that. Titan had very clear ranges of that at the medium segment or the lower segment. But in the luxury segment, lots of brands have done that. Even reputed brands like Tissot, Rado, a lot of brands have done that. So for Seiko, we will never do that. And we have a very clear marketing strategy for women. So the product is very clearly tuned to the sensibilities of the woman buyer. It might be sporty, but it's woman sporty. So you might have a very sporty looking watch, but it might have a mother of pearl dial. It might have a small red ruby at the crown. These are little nuances that are important. When you talk about marketing, of course, today you can strategically focus your marketing on various segments of the population. So I don't think that's much of a challenge as to how we will market our products to women. If you look at our buying experience, that is something that every company has to look at in India and abroad. For the woman buyer, there has to be a different kind of sensibility when they come into the store, because what they are looking for is not what always the men buyer are looking for. The reasons why they buy the watch might not be the same. The reasons why they've come into your store might not be the same. One has to, so across the retail space, you'll see in behind the counters, more women salespeople are emerging. Not just worldwide, it has happened worldwide long back, but also in India. It's quite like, if you go to in Paris and go to the Louis Vuitton store, you would see around 10 sales girls or sales managers because they are the majority of the consumers at that store in Paris. And the similar thing has to happen in India in the retail space for all product categories which which are going to address women. So you will need to have people who understand the woman's. It might be male, it might be female, who would be manning those or womaning those positions for that matter. So that's on the retail front and on the product front. Another thing on the retail front is a lot of our stores are very congested. And for men, it might not be so much of a problem, but for women it is sometimes. So having perhaps a small separate place where they can comfortably sit without being disturbed and check out their luxury products at peace would perhaps help. So we can take a lot of cues from what has happened internationally, both in marketing, in retail space, in products, and we can apply them to India. Some of them will work, some of them won't, because India is a different market altogether with different needs. But you have to make it local, as I say, global but local, and take it forward from there. So I think the woman consumer is going to be important, because when you have 15% and when you have such a huge population, that's a huge opportunity for us, massive opportunity for us, So even getting, and women today don't rely on the men to buy their product. I'm sorry, that has changed in India, and at least at our category. So they are very much consumer segment of their own, and we have to treat them better.
I'll take the last question, and it's an interesting one in the sense that Preet Z has said that one of the important aspects of online is the delivery aspect, the supply chain aspect of it, and the non-luxury segment does not have to worry about it. What can you change within the delivery mechanism or the supply chain mechanism, which can make the delivery experience contactless but a bit more experiential?
Yeah, no, that's again a very, very good question. I wish I had some of you all on my company board, more, or more such introductions. I would love.
You need to come to GeoSec and do a session.
I think I need to. I think I definitely need to as soon as this thing opens up. A lot of good ideas and good questions from there. So you're absolutely right. That's what I'm saying when I say the experiential luxury. It's easier to give it in the stores. In India, perhaps it's not going to change so much, but abroad, what has happened, or outside India, what has happened is you have a lot of these luxury products being delivered to the end consumer. So does it come in that same Amazon box, and then you open it, and then nothing is there. It's like opening a box which has perhaps books, or a box which has something else. Of course, then you have the luxury product box, which is an experience in itself. You have some stuff that you can put into it. So that experience can easily be done, putting in stuff there which gives the person a feeling that it's luxury. So what we do, let me tell you what we do for our Seiko products. So for any kind of Grand Seiko that we have to deliver to the customer, and perhaps has been bought through the omni channel, but the customer has not come to the store in India, we actually have a different package for them. So we just don't deliver the watch. We deliver the Japanese experience to them. Now that's very, overall it sounds very generic, but I'll give you a small example. So what we deliver to them along with the watch is another box of Japanese experience. So that Japanese experience can be two sake glasses with Mount Fuji crystal glasses, which they can use with a little bottle of sake. Okay, and this is not delivered with the Amazon box. The Amazon box comes, but we know when it is getting delivered. Of course, we don't sell Grand Seiko through Amazon, but I'm saying whenever the Omni box are. A day after or a week after, another person will go and deliver that box to them. So we have not forgotten them. We have not forgotten that they are a luxury customer. Our experience with them or our connect with them has not ended by selling that watch or delivering that watch to them. What is more important for us to believe and to make happen is for them to buy into our brand and what we believe in, or what our brand represents.
So it's a relationship. You build a relationship.
It's a relationship that you're building. And you can build that relationship not being at stores as well. And I've seen that. We've done it over the last 2 years. We have this little box where we sometimes send them Japanese fans. We send them little things from Japan, little goodies from Japan, perhaps Japanese cookies, and keep building that relationship. It's not just about feeding information to them about, this product is being launched. Please be the first one to buy that product. We will give you a special preview on that. Everyone does that. I haven't seen a company that doesn't do that. So it's about continuing that relationship with the consumer. It's about understanding that selling luxury is not about selling a product. It's about selling experience. It's about selling a relationship. So that is absolutely right. It's about creating a relationship with the consumer. And there is no better way to market your product or your brand than the word of mouth that comes from that consumer in the luxury space. No better way. I have not seen a more credible or better way to market your product than keeping your current consumers very, very happy. And that is what we have to aim for. So whether it is online, offline, irrespective, even online, you can give them these experiences by thinking different. That's about it. We've actually had it is not new to India. We've had these experiences, in the sari industry, in the jewelry industry in India for years, from our parents' time, our grandparents' time. We used to have the sari seller coming there and spreading out his wear and giving that the entire ladies of the house the experience of buying this product. He used to never tire from showing 100 saris, and we used to think this guy is crazy. My mother won't perhaps buy one, but he's showing 100. Similarly, the jewelers, they used to come to their homes to sell. You can keep social distancing there. That's not a problem. and take all the health precautions that are necessary. But keep connecting with that consumer. Keep acting with that consumer, and it can only help. That's how to sell them.
That's very interesting, because what you said, what you do is that you reiterate the Japanese relationship there. And what Indian brands could therefore think of and look to do is reiterate the Indianness of it. And
absolutely.
And with what the Prime Minister recently mentioned, that we need to be reiterating the Indian heritage. I think that's brands and startups need to think like that as well. But I think it's been a really insightful session, and we've well run over the time, but I hope it's been exciting and insightful for some of our viewers. I'm going to hand the mic back to Keyur at the GUSEC, and we can close it out. So thank you, Niladri, for joining us today.
Thank you, sir. Very really nice questions. Made me think as well.
Over to you, Keyur.
Yeah. So I hope the audience enjoyed the session with Niladri. So thank you so much, Niladri, for taking out the time, research time, and help the entrepreneurs out here. And thank you, Saurav, for moderating the session very well. So with this, we will wrap the session. So goodbye, everyone. See you next time. Peace out. Stay home. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's lovely being here. Thank you.